The 2019 Black Summer bushfires devastated Australia with unprecedented fury and vast destruction. Koalas faced their worst nightmare as fires destroyed forests that were their homes and safe havens. Thousands of these gentle creatures suffered from burns, loss of habitat, and scarcity of food. Volunteers and wildlife rescuers worked tirelessly to save injured koalas and provide urgent care. The crisis exposed the fragile balance between nature and the increasing threats caused by climate change. Koalas became a symbol of the broader environmental catastrophe that shook the world's attention. Communities united in fundraising and support to rebuild habitats and help the surviving wildlife. This video explores the causes, impact, and inspiring stories of rescue and resilience during that summer. You will learn how hope emerged amid tragedy and what efforts continue to protect koalas today. Make sure to like this video and subscribe for more true stories that reveal nature's powerful struggles. 1. Flames across the horizon. The summer skies turned deep orange as raging wildfires swept across vast eucalyptus forests. Thick smoke blotted out the sun, casting an eerie twilight even at the height of midday hours. Koalas clung to charred branches, their fur singed and eyes wide with confusion and terror. The crackle of flames echoed through valleys, a warning carried on the hot, restless winds. Firefighters worked without pause, pushing back the inferno with hoses and determination. Volunteers braved the smoke to rescue wildlife trapped in the encroaching wall of flames. Entire hillsides vanished under rolling fire fronts, leaving only blackened skeletal trees. Ash rained down like snow, coating the ground in a ghostly blanket of gray devastation. Families fled their homes, carrying little more than their memories and hope for survival. Eucalyptus groves that once rang with bird calls stood silent under the weight of destruction. Koalas, slow-moving and trusting, were among the most vulnerable to the fire's swift advance. Some were found clinging to tree trunks, too weak to move or escape the advancing heat. The air was thick with the scent of burnt foliage, once fragrant, now a bitter reminder. The fires consumed not just land but decades of conservation work and precious habitats. Wildlife corridors, once teeming with life, were reduced to smoldering, lifeless wastelands. Community shelters filled with rescued animals, their bodies wrapped in soothing bandages. Rescuers offered water to dehydrated koalas, their tiny hands gripping bottles with relief. 2. The silent forests before the fires. The forests of Australia sang with the calls of birds and rustling of leaves. When the flames passed, an eerie silence took hold, broken only by the creak of dead branches. Koalas once moved gently among the treetops, but now only charred trunks lined the horizon. The ground was littered with ash, a fine dust that marked where life once thrived abundantly. Rescuers searched for survivors, their boots sinking into soft layers of blackened debris. Animals that escaped the flames faced starvation as food sources were entirely destroyed. Many koalas suffered burns to their paws, unable to climb or grip the branches for safety. The once lush eucalyptus leaves, a source of life, had turned into brittle, lifeless cinders. The air hung heavy with smoke, even weeks after the last flames had been extinguished. Communities gathered to mourn not only their losses but the vanishing wildlife populations. Veterinarians worked tirelessly, tending to the injured with bandages and gentle care. In makeshift shelters, the sound of soft whimpers replaced the usual forest symphony. Volunteers fed leaves to recovering koalas, carefully selecting fresh, green branches. The absence of wildlife calls served as a constant reminder of the tragedy's true scale. Experts feared that without intervention, some local koala populations might never return. Satellite images revealed vast areas of forest reduced to shades of gray and black. 3. The race to rescue. When the first distress calls came, volunteers rushed toward the smoke, not away from it. Roads were choked with fleeing families, but rescue teams fought through to reach the forests. Koalas, dazed and injured, were carried out wrapped in blankets to protect their scorched fur. Some animals were too dehydrated to move, their mouths opening desperately for drops of water. Rescuers wore masks to breathe, their eyes stinging from the acrid haze of burning eucalyptus. Every minute mattered as the fires closed in on shrinking pockets of surviving wildlife. Veterinary tents sprang up in car parks, transforming into triage centers for the injured. Medical teams treated burns with soothing creams and wrapped delicate paws in soft gauze. The gentle grip of a koala's claw became a symbol of hope for those risking their lives. Donations poured in from around the world to fund rescue operations and medical supplies. Firefighters coordinated with wildlife carers to reach areas before they were engulfed. Helicopters dropped water on hotspots while ground crews worked to cut fire breaks. Some koalas were released into unburned areas, though safe habitats were rare to find. The urgency was relentless, new fires erupted even as old ones were brought under control. Rescuers often carried multiple animals at once, cradling them close to shield from heat. Every rescue felt like a victory in a battle that could not save every life at risk. Footage of water being given to thirsty koalas spread across social media, moving millions. 4. The wounded survivors in recovery centers. Rows of crates held koalas swaddled in soft towels and warm blankets. Each had a story etched in burns, singed ears, and the tired slump of a once strong body. Veterinarians spoke softly, calming the animals while applying ointment to their injuries. Volunteers worked in shifts, feeding eucalyptus leaves to patients too weak to reach them. Some survivors had lost entire families, their eyes scanning for familiar faces that never came. Hydration was critical. Rescuers used syringes to drip water gently into dry, cracked mouths. The smell of antiseptic mixed with the lingering scent of smoke clinging to fur and skin. Koalas with severe burns were placed in padded enclosures to avoid reopening their wounds. Every healed paw, every regained strength, was a small victory against overwhelming loss. Rescue workers whispered encouragement, knowing these gentle beings understood kindness. Wildlife hospitals overflowed, relying on public donations to keep up with medical needs. Children's toys were placed in recovery pens to comfort young koalas missing their mothers. Some would never return to the wild due to permanent injuries or destroyed home ranges. Medical charts hung on crates, detailing each animal's progress and daily treatment plans. The gentle chewing of fresh leaves was a welcome sound amid the quiet of the ward. Success stories were shared, inspiring more people to volunteer and offer their help. But for every survivor, many more had been lost in the chaos of the fires. 5. Vanishing habitats. Before the fires, vast eucalyptus forests stretched endlessly, sheltering koalas for generations. After the flames, those same forests stood as blackened ruins, stripped of life and color. Koalas depend on these trees for both food and safety, yet millions were lost overnight. With canopies gone, there was no shade to protect them from the harsh summer sun. New shoots would take years to grow, leaving survivors without reliable food sources. Some koalas wandered onto roads, searching for trees that no longer existed. Rescue teams found animals dehydrated and disoriented, unable to find familiar landmarks. Entire ecosystems collapsed when keystone trees were destroyed in minutes by the fires. Birds, insects, and mammals all lost their interconnected web of life in the burnt regions. The destruction forced animals into dangerous proximity with human settlements. Conservationists mapped out remaining green zones to identify potential safe habitats. Koalas released into unsuitable areas often faced starvation and predation. The loss of habitat also meant fewer breeding grounds for the next generation. Scientists warned that habitat fragmentation could permanently reduce population numbers. Some trees that survived were too damaged to produce the leaves koalas need to survive. Community tree planting programs began, though recovery would take decades of effort. The sight of barren hillsides served as a painful reminder of what was taken so quickly. Wildlife corridors once alive with movement became empty, lifeless stretches of land. The fight to restore koala habitats became as urgent as the rescue efforts themselves. Vanishing habitats symbolized the long shadow of Australia's Black Summer tragedy. 6. The human cost. While wildlife suffered, people too faced unimaginable loss during the Black Summer fires. Homes that stood for decades were reduced to piles of ash in a single night. Families fled in cars, driving through smoke so thick it turned day into dark twilight. Many lost pets, livestock, and the landscapes that shaped their daily lives. Communities grieved together, supporting one another through shared tragedy. Volunteer firefighters risked their lives, some never returning from the front lines. Shops, schools, and farms were destroyed, crippling local economies for years to come. The psychological toll was immense, with trauma lingering long after the fires ended. Children painted pictures of koalas and firefighters as a way to process their fear. Some families hosted rescued animals until they could be moved to wildlife centers. Donations of clothing, food, and money poured in from across Australia and abroad. The bond between humans and wildlife deepened through shared survival stories. Local heroes emerged, ordinary people who took extraordinary risks to save lives. In some towns, people stayed behind to protect not just homes but surrounding bushland. The resilience of these communities mirrored the fight of the animals they saved. Rebuilding began quickly, but the emotional scars were slower to fade. Memorials were created for both human and animal lives lost in the fires. The human cost added another layer of grief to the already heavy tragedy. Yet, in the ashes, acts of kindness lit small flames of hope for the future. The story of the human cost is inseparable from the koala crisis of Black Summer. 7. The global response. News of Australia's Black Summer spread rapidly across the world through haunting images. Photographs of burned koalas in rescuers' arms touched hearts in every corner of the globe. Donations from dozens of countries funded medical care and habitat restoration projects. Celebrities and public figures raised awareness, urging followers to contribute. International rescue organizations offered expertise and manpower to help efforts. Zoos abroad offered to care for injured koalas until their habitats could recover. Online campaigns brought together millions under the banner of saving Australian wildlife. Social media turned personal rescue videos into global rallying cries for action. Artists created paintings, songs, and sculptures dedicated to the koalas of Black Summer. Educational programs taught children worldwide about the importance of conservation. Foreign governments sent firefighting teams and equipment to aid the overwhelmed crews. Air support came from overseas, with water bombers flown in to fight the vast blazes. Global media kept the tragedy in headlines, ensuring it was not forgotten. Wildlife sanctuaries abroad offered temporary homes for displaced animals. Fundraisers broke records, showing the deep compassion people had for distant creatures. The crisis sparked renewed debate about climate change and environmental protection. Messages of solidarity arrived daily, boosting the morale of rescue workers. 8. Lessons from the flames. The fires revealed the urgent need for better preparedness against climate-driven disasters. Experts warned that rising temperatures and drought conditions had fueled the catastrophe. Land management strategies were questioned, with calls for controlled burns and fire breaks. The importance of wildlife corridors was emphasized to give animals safe escape routes. Communities recognized the need for more resources for rural firefighting services. Technology, like early warning systems, proved vital but needed further development. Koalas became ambassadors for broader environmental awareness campaigns. Conservation groups pushed for stronger protection of native forests and habitats. The fires showed that prevention was far more effective than rescue after the fact. Local councils invested in training programs to prepare volunteers for future crises. Education on climate change became part of school curriculums across the nation. New laws were proposed to limit land clearing in vulnerable koala habitats. Emergency shelters for wildlife were built in at-risk areas ahead of fire seasons. Research into fire-resistant plant species gained momentum in environmental circles. The tragedy inspired more people to volunteer with conservation and fire services. Global partnerships formed to share best practices for protecting endangered species. 9. The long road to recovery. Rebuilding after Black Summer was a process measured not in months, but in decades. Forests slowly began to sprout new green shoots from blackened trunks. Koalas were reintroduced into areas showing signs of habitat regrowth. Community planning events became regular gatherings of hope and resilience. Veterinary centers continued to treat animals long after the flames had gone. Monitoring teams tracked released koalas to ensure they adapted to new environments. Some regions saw encouraging signs of bird and insect return within 2 years. But many areas remained barren, with soil erosion threatening regrowth. Funding was crucial to sustain restoration and care efforts over the long term. Educational tours showed the progress, inspiring visitors to support the cause. Art installations in burned areas symbolized the journey from loss to renewal. The memory of the fires remained fresh in the minds of those who lived through them. Environmental groups used the tragedy to advocate for stronger protections. Local schools adopted reforested areas as part of community stewardship programs. Every sapling planted was a promise to the wildlife yet to return. 10. A warning for the future. Australia's Black Summer was not just a tragedy, it was a warning to the world. The scale of destruction showed how vulnerable even resilient ecosystems can be. Climate change is no longer a distant threat, it is a present, deadly reality. Koalas, once plentiful, became symbols of the urgency to act for all endangered species. The fires revealed the devastating cost of inaction on environmental issues. Governments were urged to prioritize conservation and climate resilience policies. Communities were reminded that nature's balance is delicate and easily broken. Scientists warned that without change, such disasters could become more frequent. The loss of biodiversity impacts not only wildlife, but human survival too. Black Summer's images continue to inspire environmental activism globally. Documentaries and books ensure the lessons are passed to future generations. Wildlife corridors and forest management became central in fire prevention strategies. The fires proved that humanity's fate is deeply tied to the health of the planet. Every rescued koala was a reminder of what is worth protecting at all costs. The tragedy became a rallying cry for urgent climate action worldwide. 11. Long-term health effects on koalas. Survivor koalas face lasting health challenges including respiratory issues from smoke inhalation. Chronic infections and scarring reduce lung function, affecting their ability to forage effectively. Burn wounds can lead to mobility problems and increased susceptibility to secondary infections. Stress from habitat loss compromises immune systems, making recovery slower and more difficult. Some koalas develop long-term eye problems from ash exposure, impacting vision and feeding. Veterinary teams continue monitoring survivors to detect and treat emerging chronic conditions. Rehabilitated koalas often require ongoing medical support after release into the wild. Tracking devices help researchers study health and movement patterns of recovering individuals. Understanding long-term effects guides improved care protocols and rehabilitation techniques. The persistence of health problems underscores the need for ongoing funding and resources. Health challenges complicate breeding programs vital for sustaining endangered populations. Public education highlights the importance of continued support even after immediate crisis ends. Conservationists advocate for integrated approaches addressing both habitat and health issues. Lessons learned from Black Summer inform care for koalas in other regions facing similar threats. Research into medicinal treatments aims to improve outcomes for fire-affected wildlife. 12. Climate change and fire frequency. Scientists link the increased frequency and intensity of fires to rising global temperatures. Prolonged droughts and heat waves create conditions conducive to large-scale wildfire outbreaks. Black Summer fires are seen as a stark example of the new normal caused by climate change. Changing weather patterns disrupt ecosystems, stressing animals and plants adapted to stability. Increased fire frequency reduces recovery time for habitats, compounding ecological damage. Koalas, reliant on specific eucalyptus species, are particularly vulnerable to these changes. Researchers warn that without action, megafires like Black Summer will become increasingly common. Climate models predict longer fire seasons and more severe fire behavior in future decades. Mitigation strategies focus on reducing greenhouse gas emissions to slow warming trends. Adaptation plans include creating fire-resilient habitats and corridors for wildlife movement. Public awareness campaigns link individual actions to broader climate and environmental impacts. Government commitments to international climate agreements reflect growing urgency. Scientists advocate for integrating climate change projections into wildlife conservation plans. Communities are encouraged to prepare for more frequent natural disasters with resilience measures. The fires underscore the interconnectedness of human activity and ecosystem health. Policies addressing climate change are vital for protecting vulnerable species like koalas. 13. Urban expansion and habitat fragmentation. Australia's growing urban areas have contributed to the loss and fragmentation of koala habitats. Housing developments often encroach on eucalyptus forests, reducing continuous habitat zones. Fragmentation isolates populations, limiting gene flow and increasing vulnerability to threats. Roads built through habitats cause higher incidences of vehicle collisions involving koalas. Domestic dogs in urban fringes pose significant predation risks to displaced koalas. Fire management becomes more complex in urban wildland interfaces with increased human presence. Local councils are implementing koala-friendly planning policies to protect critical habitats. Green corridors and wildlife crossings are designed to facilitate safe movement of koalas. Community education promotes responsible pet ownership and awareness of koala conservation. Habitat restoration efforts prioritize connecting fragmented patches to improve ecological resilience. Urban expansion pressures require balancing development needs with environmental protection. Citizen science projects engage residents in monitoring koala populations near urban areas. Mapping of koala habitats helps planners avoid critical zones and reduce future impact. Partnerships between developers and conservationists promote sustainable land use practices. Programs offer incentives for landowners to preserve and rehabilitate koala-friendly areas. The challenges of habitat fragmentation highlight the need for integrated landscape planning. Koalas symbolize the conflict between growth and conservation in modern Australia. 14. The importance of koala corridors. Wildlife corridors link isolated habitat patches, allowing koalas to travel safely across landscapes. Corridors reduce risks associated with crossing roads and entering urbanized areas. They provide access to food, mates, and shelter, which is critical for population viability. Establishing corridors involves planting native vegetation and restoring degraded lands. Community involvement is key to identifying and maintaining effective corridor routes. Scientific studies monitor corridor use and assess their impact on koala survival and movement. Some corridors incorporate tunnels and overpasses to mitigate road crossing dangers. Corridors also benefit other native species, increasing overall biodiversity and ecosystem health. Government funding supports corridor projects as part of broader conservation plans. Landowners collaborate with conservation groups to protect and enhance corridor areas. Public awareness campaigns encourage support for corridors as essential conservation tools. Technology such as GPS tracking helps study koala movement and corridor effectiveness. Challenges include land availability, funding, and balancing competing land use interests. Success depends on long-term maintenance and adapting corridors as habitats change. Corridors are a vital strategy for mitigating effects of fragmentation and climate change. Integrating corridors into urban planning reduces human-wildlife conflicts in growing regions. Koala corridors symbolize hope for reconnecting populations and improving genetic diversity. 15. Advances in koala veterinary care. Veterinary medicine has evolved to better treat injuries sustained during fires and other trauma. Specialized burn treatments have improved survival rates for koalas suffering from fire wounds. Use of analgesics and antibiotics reduces pain and prevents infections during recovery. Rehabilitation centers have developed protocols tailored specifically for koala physiology. Therapeutic diets and hydration therapy support weakened koalas through long healing processes. Behavioral enrichment during rehabilitation promotes mental health and prepares animals for release. Surgical techniques have advanced to address complex injuries sustained during the fires. Use of wearable technology helps monitor vital signs and recovery progress in real time. Community fundraising supports acquisition of advanced veterinary equipment and facilities. Public awareness campaigns educate on the importance of specialized care for wildlife. Innovations in anesthesia and pain management enhance animal welfare during treatment. Interdisciplinary approaches integrate veterinary care with habitat and population management. Veterinary advances have made a critical difference in the survival of many fire-affected koalas. Continued research is vital to refine treatments and address emerging health challenges. These medical developments contribute significantly to koala conservation and species recovery. 16. The role of indigenous knowledge. Indigenous Australians have a deep understanding of the land and its ecosystems accumulated over millennia. Traditional land management techniques such as controlled burning help reduce wildfire risks. Indigenous knowledge contributes to identifying key koala habitats and migration patterns. Collaboration between indigenous groups and scientists improves conservation outcomes. Cultural practices emphasize respect and stewardship of native species including koalas. Joint land management programs integrate scientific and traditional approaches for sustainability. Indigenous rangers play vital roles in monitoring wildlife and maintaining healthy ecosystems. Community education programs highlight indigenous perspectives on fire and habitat management. Incorporating indigenous fire regimes can prevent catastrophic megafires while supporting biodiversity. Recognition of indigenous land rights fosters inclusive conservation planning and governance. Indigenous storytelling preserves knowledge about koalas and their role in local cultures. Partnerships empower indigenous communities to lead and benefit from conservation initiatives. Traditional ecological knowledge informs habitat restoration and species protection strategies. Indigenous art and ceremonies celebrate koalas, raising awareness of their cultural significance. Collaborative research respects indigenous intellectual property and cultural values. Indigenous-led conservation projects serve as models for combining heritage and science. 17. Education and public awareness. Education campaigns during and after Black Summer focused on koala conservation and fire safety. Schools incorporated lessons on environmental protection and the impacts of climate change. Public service announcements urged communities to reduce fire risks through responsible behavior. Wildlife organizations hosted workshops and events to teach rescue and first aid for injured animals. Social media played a major role in spreading awareness and fundraising for koala relief. Documentaries and books told stories of survival and recovery to engage wider audiences. Interpretive centers at zoos and parks provided interactive learning about koalas and habitats. Citizen science projects invited the public to participate in koala monitoring and reporting. Educational materials emphasized the importance of preserving native forests and corridors. Volunteer programs included training to safely assist in wildlife rescue and habitat restoration. Local governments launched campaigns encouraging fire preparedness and ecological stewardship. Art contests and competitions promoted creative expression related to environmental themes. Partnerships with media outlets ensured accurate and compelling messaging about the crisis. Targeted programs aimed to reach children, farmers, and urban residents with tailored content. Education helped shift attitudes towards sustainable land use and climate action. Community engagement events built networks of supporters advocating for koala protection. 18. Economic consequences of the crisis. The fires caused widespread economic losses in tourism, agriculture, and local businesses. Wildlife tourism, particularly visits to koala sanctuaries, suffered during and after the fires. Costs of rescue, rehabilitation, and habitat restoration placed heavy financial burdens on organizations. Insurance claims and infrastructure repairs added to governmental and private sector expenses. Loss of timber and agricultural output affected livelihoods in rural communities surrounding forests. Charitable giving and donations increased to support emergency response and recovery efforts. Investment in new infrastructure incorporated fire-resistant designs, increasing initial costs. Economic recovery depended on balancing development with sustainable environmental practices. The crisis stimulated growth in conservation-related jobs, including veterinary and forestry roles. Fundraising events and campaigns generated significant funds for ongoing koala protection. Government grants helped stabilize affected sectors and fund research and community programs. Long-term economic planning now includes disaster risk reduction as a core component. Tourism marketing shifted to promote recovery stories and ecotourism opportunities. Local businesses adapted by integrating conservation messaging into their operations. The economic impact reinforced the need for climate adaptation strategies across industries. Sustainable development initiatives gained traction as communities rebuilt with resilience. Koala conservation emerged as both a cultural and economic priority in affected regions. Private-public partnerships expanded to support environmental and economic recovery. The Black Summer crisis highlighted the interdependence of environmental health and economy. Investment in nature protection is increasingly recognized as vital for Australia's future prosperity. 19. The importance of research and monitoring. Ongoing research monitors koala populations to assess recovery progress post-fire. Satellite imagery helps track habitat changes and regrowth over large, inaccessible areas. Field surveys document population densities, health status, and reproductive success rates. Genetic studies evaluate the impacts of fragmentation on koala gene flow and diversity. Disease surveillance identifies emerging health threats that may be exacerbated by fire stress. Tracking technology, such as GPS collars, provides data on koala movement and habitat use. Longitudinal studies assess the effectiveness of habitat restoration and corridor implementation. Research informs adaptive management strategies to respond to changing environmental conditions. Data sharing platforms enhance transparency and facilitate coordinated conservation efforts. Monitoring informs policy decisions and prioritizes areas needing urgent protection or intervention. Community science projects contribute valuable observations supplementing formal research. Studies also focus on koala behavior and social dynamics in post-fire landscapes. Understanding koalas' ecological requirements guides habitat management and fire mitigation. Research outcomes are published widely to raise awareness and inform global conservation practices. Investing in research is crucial to anticipate future threats and improve recovery outcomes. Monitoring efforts help ensure that conservation actions remain effective and evidence-based. Knowledge gained supports not only koalas but also broader ecosystem resilience and health. The Black Summer underscored research as a foundation for informed, proactive wildlife care. Sustained investment in science is key to preventing and mitigating future wildlife crises. 20. Vision for a sustainable future. The koala crisis revealed urgent needs for sustainable environmental and community practices. Future strategies focus on integrating fire management, habitat protection, and climate action. Collaboration across sectors including government, indigenous groups, scientists, and citizens is vital. Sustainable land use policies seek to balance development with conservation imperatives. Education and engagement empower communities to act as stewards of local ecosystems. Investment in green infrastructure enhances resilience to natural disasters and climate change. Monitoring and research remain central to adaptive management and policy refinement. Technology and innovation support more effective wildlife care and environmental protection. Cultural recognition of koalas' significance fosters pride and motivates conservation efforts. Economic incentives encourage landowners to participate in habitat restoration and protection. Fire prevention measures incorporate traditional knowledge and scientific best practices. Wildlife corridors and refuges are expanded to safeguard populations against future threats. Public awareness campaigns sustain momentum for conservation beyond immediate crises. Youth involvement ensures that future generations inherit knowledge and commitment. Global partnerships provide resources and share lessons from Australia's experiences. Long-term vision embraces coexistence of humans and nature in dynamic, changing landscapes. Building resilience to climate impacts is essential for the survival of koalas and other species. Hope and action go hand in hand, transforming tragedy into opportunity for renewal. The Black Summer Crisis is a catalyst for lasting change and environmental responsibility. Together, Australia can protect its unique wildlife and create a sustainable future for all. The koala crisis is a stark reminder of how climate change and human activity threaten vulnerable species. Recovery is ongoing, with conservationists working hard to restore forests and provide shelter for wildlife. We must act now to protect habitats and ensure a safer future for koalas and all native animals. Like this video and subscribe for more impactful stories about our planet's urgent environmental challenges. Share your thoughts and hopes for wildlife conservation in the comments below to join the conversation. Thanks for watching and supporting efforts to preserve the precious creatures that share our world.